There's a ton of creepy characters in video games, and they aren't always enemies. Sometimes they're just some weirdo who happens to be around. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx 13 really creepy characters in video games. Coming in at number 13 is Marguerite Baker. Marguerite is what I would like to call a special kind of weird. Obviously, you first meet her with the entire Baker family, and they're all feeding you human parts, because they're cannibals. And that's already creepy. They're stabbing each other and, just doing stuff that you don't normally do as a family. She gets really offended that you didn't eat her food, and although it's not really referenced later as why, she's pretty hostile towards you while you're searching the old house for stuff. I'm not gonna get into it. Anyway, in flashbacks, it's really cool. You get to see scorpions fly out of her mouth. And by really cool, I mean, not actually really cool. Well, I mean, from a graphical perspective, it actually is pretty cool looking, but if we're talking about the in-game characterization, don't love it, don't want to be around it, want to be out of there. It's particularly creepy too if you read her journal, which sort of exhaustively chronicles her transformation from normal person into, well, this. And it kind of adds a layer of tragedy to it that in some ways makes you almost sympathetic, but then you see the long arm, Marguerite's long arm, after you think Marguerite's dead and didn't have long arms before. Actually, I'm gonna get out of here. See ya.
Number 12, Slenderman from Slender. Now, I know that Slenderman has kind of been defanged by his popularization, but when you just see pictures of him and look at it, you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's right. You haunted my nightmares for a while. Slenderman is kind of the perfect example of the uncanny valley. He's not so that he's obviously comically fake, but rather he's very similar to a human except very tall and has several variables including his limbs being tentacles or not being tentacles, but he never has a face. His close proximity to being human but obviously not being human makes him super creepy. Pair that with the fact that the games that he appears in are generally just get killed by Slenderman simulators. Slenderman will probably wander in and out of the public consciousness forever. He's an iconic and incredibly creepy character. Number 11, Granny Rags from Dishonored. Now, Granny Rags appears to be just kind of a creepy old lady, just an old woman who mutters to herself and has a sad story to tell. But as it turns out, she's actually an incredibly powerful witch with connections to the Outsider. She's also a cannibal and had captured Slackjaw, intending to cook and eat him, which you can actually help her do if you're particularly wrong in the head. Granny Rags has this weird air about her that Dowd talks about whenever he uses one of the runes that she's created. He feels as though a tiny piece of him has departed and settled in with her. It's possible she's able to somehow suck power out of people as they use the things that she's created. She's definitely a wolf in sheep's clothing and does everything she can to appear vulnerable, but very clearly is not. Number 10, Majora from Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Majora we don't really know what exactly looks like, but it possesses the mask that titles the game. Majora was quite possibly a sadistic demon according to many theories, and wanted to, quote-unquote, consume everything. There's no actual canon motives for any of this, but we do know that the mask itself is essentially continually trying to destroy Termina, where the game takes place, with a moon that it's essentially possessing. The mask comes off as very demented, as it talks through the Skull Kid and on its own. In fact, the game itself comes off as fairly demented. It's perhaps one of the darkest Zelda games that exists, and that's thanks in no small part to the mask itself. Number 9, Alma from Fear. Alma is every kind of creepy you can imagine through the course of the series. You first see her as the creepy child, then as the creepy, emaciated dead woman, also as an over-sexualized but immature young woman, and finally throughout her pregnancy. She's either confused or angry pretty much all the time, and is incredibly powerful. Even in Fear 3, where she's not actually an antagonist and never attacks you, she just manages to creep you out the entire time you see her. Oh, and she's your mother. Imagine this freakazoid singing you lullabies. Yeesh. Number 8, Asphyxia from Silent Hill Homecoming. Asphyxia is basically a natural human centipede. I don't really know how else to put it. It looks a lot like a body that has other bodies attached to it. The other bodies sort of act as a tail, but where her head would be, there's another torso and then a head. It's really a freakish thing. But Silent Hill is not exactly known for having comforting scenes of cute animals and hug fests and things like that. No, Silent Hill's generally filled with the freakish. Asphyxia is among the most freakish. much. Number 7, Richard Trager from Outlast. Trager's a fella that has a few problems. He's also one of those oh how the mighty have fallen stories. Trager was actually an executive in the Murkoff Research and Development Wing. Nobody's really sure whether he's actually a surgeon or he just thinks that he is one, but he essentially just finds people and chops them up. He has a big pair of scissors that aren't exactly regulation, let's say, and wears a torn up surgeon's mask. Generally, as far as disfigurements, it could be worse for Dr. Trager, because he's not really a great looking fella, but it's more his tone that really makes him a creep. And when you first meet him, you think he's gonna be some kind of a friend, and then beats you senseless, and creepily offers you the ability to leave the asylum by wheeling you by the exit door. Now you've just been beat senseless, and you can't leave, so he acts like you want to stay. What a nice fellow. Number 6, Terry Akers from Soma. Now Terry isn't that different from a lot of the proxies in the game, the enemies that you encounter all the time, but he does have a few minor unique traits. For instance, his arms are, well, there. They don't look great, but they're a little bit better than the proxies, I'd say. On top of that, he seems to have an arm that's grown through his abdomen, and a big scar through the middle of his body. I don't know whether he was chopped in half and healed or what, but it looks like it. I think what makes Terry Akers so much more creepy than the other proxies there is that you still know him as Terry Akers. He's regarded with a name, and he's just a monster. Granted, he's a little bit tougher and a little bit smarter than the other monsters, but you're calling him Terry Akers like it's still a person, and it's just weird. It's disconcerting, you know? He operates doors like a human being, which is something that the other proxies can't do, but you know, if pissed off or trapped, he can just, you know, rip them off, just like any of the other ones. Also, he's gross. The structure gel in that game does some gross stuff to people. Number 5, Vaati L from Silent Hill 3. Vaati L is actually a pretty passive character for Silent Hill, and kind of just basically appears. The first time you see Vaati L, it's turning a valve after having shifted over to the other world. The indicator is that Vaati L may have something to do with the shifting over to the other world, and no one likes the other world. That's not nice. Vaati L has a seal of Metatron on both shoulders, so it's probably a subordinate of Metatron who is actually an angel. And being the plot has a lot to do with gods in Silent Hill 3, one can assume that the reason why sometimes when you die Vaati L drags you away is because he's interested in the god that you're supposedly carrying around in your belly. And Vaati L also twitches a lot. You might call him twitchy. Number 4, Shodan from System Shock. Now I'm sure at this point you've seen plenty of malevolent artificial intelligences through the years, but Shodan was one of the biggest. Shodan was the result of a hacker basically removing any ethics and self-governing capabilities to avoid an artificial intelligence basically going mad with power, which is exactly what happened. What makes Shodan so creepy is the way it talks. Shodan stutters and has a weird sort of electric cadence to the way it speaks. And to those that are afraid of an AI-controlled future, Shodan's basically the worst nightmare. After Shodan's initial defeat, it was looked at as like Hitler on Earth, like literally as a complete and total singular threat, a truly awful presence. And really, it looked like one. I don't know why anyone would design something to look like that. Number 3, Pyramid Head from Silent Hill 2. Pyramid Head is arguably the most symbolic creature in all of Silent Hill, and though he didn't appear until the second game, when you think Silent Hill, you pretty much think Pyramid Head. Now what's interesting is that it's likely that there isn't just one Pyramid Head, but rather several, and that it's more of a classification of monster than a monster. Either way, it generally acts as a manifestation of guilt and works to punish the person seeing it. One surefire way to get rid of them is to stop wanting to be punished, but of course that's a narrative thing, and there's no stop wanting to be punished button. Number 2, Lisa from PT, who is a smiley ghost that you don't associate any of the feelings that would normally come with smiling with. Lisa wears one high heel, a bloody dress, specifically bloody in the stomach because she was supposedly pregnant. Her husband actually shot her in the stomach, which killed her baby, and she's missing her right eye. There's a photo that has "gouge it out" written on it. It's probably referring to her eye as the eye is gone, and there's also writing saying an eye for an eye. All of these things combine to make a ghost that kind of, I don't understand why she's smiling. It has to be like some sort of tragic irony, but the way she moves around and sobs and laughs and generally is a violent, horrific specter make her a ghost I just, well, don't want to be dismembered by. And finally, number 1, the Lubberkin from The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, was essentially the child of the Bloody Baron, not given a name and not properly buried. It essentially raised itself and became, well, horrible. The Lubberkin is creepy in a sad way. There's essentially a ton of horrible events surrounding it, and you're helping a person who's done horrible things to put it to rest. Perhaps the one good thing the Bloody Baron can even do for his child. Which one did you think was the creepiest? Let us know in the comments, and if you have any other creepy enemies you'd like to contribute, we'd love to hear. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and if you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week, and the best way to see them first is of course a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon, you can follow me at Falcon the Hero, and we will see you next time, right here on gameranx.